Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Taysom Hill touchdown.
Quarterback, wide receiver.
Hill gonna throw. An end zone. Hill.
Offensive lineman, defensive lineman, fullback, running back.
Hill caught this one and he will run it in.
And a plethora and a barrage of other things as well.
Taysom Hill, truly the biggest oddity in today's NFL. A player whose role in the Saints can best be summed up by the phrase football player. However, despite his revolutionary approach to football, one question has lingered as the years have passed. Can Taysom Hill play quarterback? So today we'll look to answer this question and ultimately determine whether Taysom Hill is a qualified quarterback or a glorified gadget. But before we get going here, I want to quickly mention that only a small percentage of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you do end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to keep up with my content. And with that being said, let's get started. Taysom Hill was born and raised in Pocatello, Idaho, where he played football, basketball, and ran track at nearby Highland High School. And during his senior year, Hill would explode onto the map, catching the eyes of college scouts across the country by throwing for 2,200 yards and 18 touchdown passes and tacking on an extra 1,400 yards and 24 touchdowns on the ground. And after his senior campaign, Hill would commit to Stanford to play under Jim Harbaugh, though he planned to start playing for the program after he finished serving 2 years as a missionary out in Sydney, Australia for the Church of Latter-day Saints. Hill would return home in January of 2012, only to learn that Stanford did not allow for incoming freshmen to join the team until June, and because of this, Hill would forego his commitment to Stanford, opting to enroll at Brigham Young University instead, a school which allowed incoming freshmen to join the team immediately. Entering his freshman year, Hill was the second quarterback on the depth chart, sat behind senior quarterback Riley Nelson. Though Hill would play in 6 games in 2012, initially being only used for special packages, but ultimately going on to usurp Riley Nelson and gain the starting job halfway through the season. However, at the end of his second game as a starter, we would bear witness to the beginning of what would go on to become a recurring pattern that would plague the remainder of Hill's college career, as in the closing seconds of a matchup against Utah State, Hill would suffer a season-ending knee injury. Although his season had been cut short though, Hill had shown his coaches more than enough to justify slotting him in as the starting quarterback heading into 2013, a season that would see him start all 13 games where he would pass for 2,900 yards, 19 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, and tack on an extra 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground. Pretty solid numbers, all things considered, until you get to his 54% completion rate. Taysom proved that he can ball, but he also proved to be wildly inefficient. A narrative that, in a way, still sticks with him to this day, and a narrative that we will touch on much later in this video. Heading into his junior season, Taysom was geared up to light the college football landscape on fire, and through his first 4 games, he would put up some really solid numbers, passing for 975 yards with 7 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, and tacking on an extra 460 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground through those 4 games. He would also raise his overall efficiency significantly, completing 67% of his passes through those 4 games. And just when everything was beginning to come together, tragedy struck yet again. In a Week 5 matchup against Utah State, Hill would fracture his leg, officially putting an end to what looked like a very promising junior campaign. So heading into his senior season, Hill was looking to pair the longevity from his sophomore season with the efficiency from his junior season. However, tragedy would strike yet again when he suffered a Lisfranc fracture during BYU's opener against Nebraska, an injury that would sideline Hill for the remainder of the season. Though it wasn't all doom and gloom, as Hill would be granted a medical redshirt, giving him 1 more year at BYU to prove himself to NFL scouts and make another attempt to pair his sophomore longevity with the junior efficiency, and 2016 would see him accomplish the former, just not the latter, as Hill would go on to complete less than 60% of his passes while only putting up 2,300 yards through the air with 12 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, of course it got worse. In a Week 12 matchup against none other than Utah State, Taysom Hill would go down with a hyperextended elbow, his 4th and final season-ending injury, putting a cap on what might have just been the most unlucky college football career we've ever seen. Still, Taysom Hill would declare for the 2017 NFL Draft, where he would go undrafted, but would be picked up soon after by the Green Bay Packers as an undrafted free agent. And his time in Green Bay would see him appear in 3 preseason games with the team, where his freakish athleticism would be put on full display. However, despite showing promise, he would ultimately not earn a roster spot, and the Packers would waive him. And this is where a certain Sean Payton came in knocking, claiming claiming Taysom Hill off of waivers. For years, Sean had casually made mention of his desire to work with an athletic quarterback during interviews, and when he watched the tape, he saw something in Taysom that he just couldn't pass on. Sean saw potential in Taysom not only as a quarterback, but as an athlete, and would go on to progressively mold him into the league's ultimate Swiss Army knife over the next 3 seasons. From rushing to receiving to returning punts, even blocking punts, he does it all now. Well, he almost does it all. You see, there's no Swiss Army knife position on the NFL depth chart, so Hill is technically listed as a quarterback despite the fact that he sees the least amount of his snaps at the position. And with rumors of the Saints' possible intent to move forward with Hill once Drew Brees is gone, Sean Payton even going to the extent of saying that Hill is the second coming of Steve Young, this has raised quite a few eyebrows given his struggles in college and lack of experience at the NFL level. And at this point, with Drew Brees likely entering his final season in the NFL, which leaves the Saints quarterback situation in somewhat of a limbo-like state heading into 2021, the question on everyone's mind is whether Taysom Hill is a qualified quarterback or a glorified gadget. Taking a step back to really assess Taysom Hill's playstyle found me consistently linking him to Lamar Jackson. Now, this is not to say that Taysom is as good as Lamar, rather, it's to say that I feel there are many undeniable similarities between their playstyles. They're both freakishly athletic players who are both capable of consistently running the quarterback draw at the NFL level, and when it comes to passing, both of them are incredible arm talents whose main knock on their passing game coming out of college was their accuracy, a narrative that Lamar managed to largely silence with his 2019 MVP campaign. Now, there are definitely some differences though. I mean, comparatively, I think Taysom is more of a physical runner who doesn't shy away from contact, whereas Lamar is more of a slippery and elusive runner. Now, this difference in playstyle plays a huge role in the reason why I'm actually kind of wary about Taysom as a starting quarterback. Whether you like to admit it or not, it's statistically proven that a quarterback who runs more is more likely to get injured. By exposing themselves the way they do to things like quarterback draws, as opposed to only running when necessary, they inherently put themselves at a higher risk of injury. And that said, when you put yourself in that position and then go on to choose to take a more physical approach like Taysom does, you heighten your already very high chances of injury just that much more, as opposed to a player like Lamar who, while not scared of physical contact, would rather just break your ankles and make you look stupid in front of millions on live TV. But similar to Lamar, with the risk, there is a lot of reward. Now, I don't think Taysom's athleticism and the opportunities it brings to the table when it comes to Sean Payton and his offense requires much mentioning. Pairing Taysom Hill with Sean Payton is a recipe for disaster for opposing defenses just because of his sheer versatility. The real question mark, though, when it comes to Taysom is the passing game and whether he's capable of running an offense and getting the ball out at a necessary level for an NFL quarterback to thrive. That's yet another risk when it comes to Taysom, and it's admittedly an unknown variable at this point in time, though there are signs that point in a positive direction. In his limited sample size, where he's had that opportunity to show off what he's capable of whilst consistently under center, that limited sample size being the preseason, of which in 2019, Taysom put up a solid performance in the passing game, managing to complete 67.8% of his passes with an above average yards per average of 7.51 with 3 touchdowns to 1 interception through 4 games. You also can't forget the fact that he's been given the opportunity to sit behind Drew Brees, who is statistically the most accurate quarterback in NFL history for 3 going on 4 years now. Now, with all of that being said, I have to admit, I'm not too sure how I feel about the idea of Taysom being our quarterback when Drew retires, for the same reason why I have reservations about Lamar Jackson with the Ravens long term. Both quarterbacks' playstyles have been proven over the years to be incredibly volatile when compared to a normal quarterback. And as a Saints fan, I became even more conflicted when Jameis Winston was tossed into the mix. Now, while he is incredibly raw, this opportunity to develop and learn behind Drew Brees for a year will be huge for him in the long run, and it actually could help him start to turn things around in his career. Jameis Winston is a less refined Patrick Mahomes, and before you skewer me, please hear me out. Both of them have that gunslinger mantra with very, very high ceilings, only unlike Mahomes, Jameis never had that opportunity to refine his game behind a veteran. Until now. Now, am I saying that Jameis Winston is the next Patrick Mahomes? Obviously not. I am saying that there are very obvious similarities between their playstyles, which yielded wildly different outcomes, partially due to the different environments they entered out of college. That said, when the Saints signed Jameis, I took a step back and I asked myself one question. Who would I rather have? Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson? And I quickly came to terms with the fact that I'd rather have Mahomes, not because of his Super Bowl win, but because his playstyle is less risky and yields a similar reward. And given the respective established parallels, if Taysom proves to be accurate and Jameis manages to refine his decision-making, if I had to pick between the two, I'd choose Jameis because his playstyle is less risky, with a similar reward to Taysom's. Though that does not mean that I'm opposed to giving Taysom a chance, nor does that mean I'm writing off the possibility of Taysom playing quarterback at a proficient level. And neither should you. You simply can't write Taysom off at this current stage, as he's yet to get his chance. And until he gets his chance, you can't determine whether he will be able to play quarterback at the NFL level or not. I've noticed that NFL fans are keen to write a player off before they ever have a chance to prove themselves, which is something that we're seeing happen to Taysom Hill. Fact is, all these guys deserve a chance, and you can't write a player off entirely based on your preconceived notions. A recent instance where this trigger finger backfired was with Lamar Jackson. Everyone and their mother said that the Ravens would regret moving on from Flacco and that Lamar is a bust, that Lamar is a running back, and he became the second unanimous MVP in his first full season as a starter. Now, that also does not mean I'm saying Taysom is a surefire starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm not trying to argue that he's going to win the MVP in his first year as a starter, but what I am arguing is that there's undeniable promise shown in his limited sample size, but there's no saying whether he will pan out as a quarterback or not. And that's okay, because right now, rather than casting stones or claiming he's the next big thing, all we can do is wait for his chance to come.